It's a very important gathering here in South Africa when you look at the very important strategic partnership between South Africa and European Union, one of the 10 countries in the world that enjoys this particular type of relationship. Obviously an array of issues to be discussed by the leaders in terms of trade, investment and also digital economy, but also in the context of the geopolitical instability among others. But really to explore further in terms of what's really going to be on the agenda, we're joined by the presidential spokesperson, Mr. Magwenya. Thank you so much indeed, sir, and welcome to SABC News. So once again, quite a very important time for South Africa and EU. In fact, I was going through the statement by the EU Commission's President, Dr. von der Leyen, and she was saying South Africa can always count on EU given this unique relationship. Tell us about the importance of this summit.
Kaya, it's a very important summit, but it's also a very important relationship, strategically important relationship. You will know that South Africa is one of about 10 or so countries that have such a strategic partnership with the EU. There are not that many countries, and certainly the only one on the continent that has such a relationship. This is the 8th summit that South Africa will be having with the EU, and we are delighted that it's a summit that we are hosting in the same year. We are also leading as South Africa the G20, and so with respect to the agenda and the issues, certainly we will be looking at the consolidation of the partnership, number one. And number two, we will be looking at various areas of mutual interest and trade in particular. From a South African point of view, we want to obviously harmonize the sort of trade environment we have between ourselves and the EU, but also we want to align the various regulatory pieces so that there is ease of movement of goods between our respective jurisdictions. And thirdly, we want to expand the sort of basket of goods that we are trading with the EU, and also go into new areas of investments where we can create more demand, we can expand our own manufacturing or industrial capacity for goods that will be destined for destinations. So it is coming, this summit is coming at a time when there's all sorts of geopolitical pressures, and we certainly do appreciate the importance not only of the timing but of this partnership with the EU.
And just once again, sir, while we have you, undeniably, obviously, these are very enormously pressurized times. I mean, we're looking at these tariffs really affecting so many economies, and also EU itself, whether you're looking at Canada, so many countries, and also in the context of South Africa. We know that you have been speaking about leveraging from your diplomatic relations. I would imagine also this is a very opportune time to expand and look at other areas in terms of the key markets in this regard.
No, certainly we will do that, but it's important that as we do that, we consolidate what we have. Where there's room to expand on what we already have, we do so. As we venture into new markets where we can grow our trade exposure, and where a lot of our exporters in multiple sectors can export their products. And so we definitely are looking at that, but it's important that the partnerships that we currently have are sustained, and those partnerships where there's room to expand, and there's always room to expand, and certainly with the EU there is room to expand, and we will certainly do so, and push for that expansion in a way that is mutually beneficial both ourselves as well as the EU. But we are hard at work in looking at markets that we've not sufficiently exploited, to look at how we grow our trade exposure into those markets for the benefit, obviously, of our economy, but doing so in a manner that's mutually beneficial. But that is not to say we will then abandon our traditional and historical trade partners. If you're thinking about the US and you've not said it, I will say it for you. We're not going to abandon the US at any point in time, notwithstanding the challenges we're currently facing. We've said we want to do a trade deal with the US. We are working on that trade deal. As and when the time is appropriate for the president to send a delegation to the US, that delegation will not be going to the US empty-handed. It will be carrying something that's quite substantial in terms of a trade proposal that we think the US will also be attracted to and be interested in engaging over.
And one of the topical issues obviously will have to be Ukraine. We know South Africa is non-aligned, and obviously with EU, I mean, we've seen them ramping up the supports for Ukraine, but big developments coming from Jeddah. South Africa's observations in terms of these talks, these proposed 30-day ceasefire so far?
Kaya, as you know, at some point South Africa was probably the only country that was being criticized for being non-aligned. And it was one of the few countries that had the capacity to speak to both warring parties. President Ramaphosa could pick up a phone and call President Zelensky. He could also do the same with a great deal of confidence and comfort and call President Putin. So we are pleased to see that finally there is this convergence around the position that we've maintained and sustained for the longest of time during the course of this conflict, that says this conflict will only be resolved through dialogue. The only path to peace is that of dialogue. And so we are pleased that we've seen these developments coming out of Jeddah, developments that will lead to an inclusive peace process, that will lead to a road to peace that is characterized by dialogue. And we believe that everybody that has a vested interest in seeing the end of that conflict wants to see peace. You may find that others are ramping up other kinds of support to Ukraine, but ultimately what we know from a number of engagements we've held as a government, that the president has held, even with various European leaders, they want to see the end of that conflict. They want to see peace in that region. And so this is a positive development. And this is, again, a development where ourselves and the Trump administration are also aligned in terms of seeing an end to that conflict. And so President Ramaphosa remains ready and available and willing to assist with contributing in whichever form to that peace process. As you know, President Zelensky is due to visit South Africa on the 10th of April. And that visit will be, or rather it will feature talks around a peace process. But we also have to look beyond the war. We have to look beyond the conflict and start to look at what are opportunities in terms of our own bilateral relationship with Ukraine, and what do those opportunities look like. And so it will be a comprehensive engagement with President Zelensky while we will continue supporting any process that is around a peaceful resolution of that conflict.
All right. And just before I let you go, so obviously, even right in the backyard of Africa, we do have the conflicts. Very restive parts of eastern parts of Congo, even where you have the SANDF members as part of the SADC mission in the DRC. Are you perhaps looking at working with Europe and also just many other partners in terms of making sure that that part of Congo is stabilized?
Absolutely, not just the part of Congo, the Sudan, the South Sudan. We've said all these conflicts, as much as we as Africans bear the most responsibility in ensuring that we silence the guns in our continent, the rest of the world needs to work with us. You know, we are an interconnected world. From a South African point of view, we strive and we work towards a better Africa and a better world. And so we will always look to working with all partners in ensuring that we silence the guns on the continent. That's the first point. The second, with regards to the DRC, there is an extraordinary summit tomorrow. The leaders will meet virtually, and key decisions with respect to the resolution of that conflict in the Eastern DRC will be taken. Obviously, from a South African point of view, we are interested in seeing an acceleration of diplomatic efforts towards the resolution of that conflict. We are interested in seeing the various peace processes being consolidated, and we are extremely interested, and this is something the President is quite passionate about, in seeing all the parties to that conflict sitting around the table and finding ways to negotiate a peaceful settlement to that conflict. Without preempting what the leaders will decide tomorrow, these are positions we are interested in, but the SADC leaders will converge tomorrow. They will take those decisions, and through SADC those decisions will be communicated.
All right, so many thanks indeed for your time. Of course, Mr. Magwenya there, the presidential spokesperson, really outlining the importance around the EU-South Africa summits. And as we know that these relations, really, they were actually, just in terms of the strategic partnership, officially formalized around 2007, but also looking at an array of areas, especially around trade, development, innovation, and many other aspects as well. Khalihle Khumalo, SABC News, Cape Town.